I'm Peter McLean. I'm the Audiovisual Design Manager and Lead Architect for the university. When I came here 11 years ago, as part of that new fleet, we said, well, what's important? And for our learning and teaching in a learning space, it is audio-visual, but the most important is to be able to hear that academic. If I'm talking to you now, it's not only just hearing what I'm saying, it's me connecting to you, so that you feel connected. But in a learning space, as I'm talking to you now, you've got a mental image of what I'm saying, and you're putting it into context of all of your whole life, everything you've ever done, but everything in AV we've talked about, what you know about education, and you're building this model, and you need most of your brain space to be able to think about it and put it in context. When I came here originally, in one of our main lecture theatres, I stood at the back of the lecture theatre, 400 students. There was a lady who was the academic. I stood at the back. It was just a low-cost wireless microphone, a lapel mic. The acoustics were poor, and I could barely understand her. I had to look at her and really concentrate. But all I could get was the words she was saying. I had no brain space to actually do anything with it, so no learning could happen. In fact, when I looked around, if I looked at something else, I couldn't be connected with her. And you look around at the students, and 90% of the students were on their tablets or their iPhones or their laptops. So that means 90% of them were hearing zero, because there's no way they could hear that. They will say, I'm listening, but they're not comprehending anything. When we upgraded that over the summer, we fixed up the acoustics. We upgraded and put the Shure wireless microphones in. We put high quality ERW speakers and PowerSoft amps as a complete system. I stood at the back of that room, and no matter which way I looked, I could not disconnect what I was hearing from her. And in fact, I looked around and not one student I could see was on a device. So we went from, that's, not 100%, that's 1,000% improvement in our education in that space. And that's part of that connection. Having a high quality microphone to start with means that you're starting with a high quality audio, but it's also the transmission. The digital means that you have very little loss. There's no compansion like the older system, so you're getting much cleaner. But the other thing was we needed to be able to have multiples of them. And when I first came, we had one in each lecture theatre. We've got spaces. Our largest space has 54 wireless microphones in it. They all work perfectly together. In that building, our learning teaching building, we have over 300 wireless microphones. None of them interfere with each other. But the microphone brand we were originally using could only have 16 channels. That whole building could only have 16 channels. So we can run 511 channels in the high density mode, all in one room, without interfering with each other if we want. So the encryption, a lot of people think the encryption on the wireless mics is only because you want it in a bank or something so people can't hear the detailed, the private information. And that's where it sort of started, but the encryption is really important, because what the encryption does, it means that even if there's another microphone in another room, 3 rooms down on the same frequency, this receiver will never hear it, because it's not encrypted to it. So you never hear it. If you're not unencrypted on the same channel, I'll turn my mic off and it'll suddenly pick up that. Our first experience was 2 lecture theatres 200 metres apart. I had 3 brick walls between them, and we were running on 1 milliwatt, the lowest power we could. But I turned the system on in the room, hadn't turned the mic on. I could clearly hear, because digital's either perfect or not. I could hear the other lecturer over there. I could tell you exactly what he said, because it was perfectly in the room. As soon as I turned the encryption on, he disappeared. So that's allowed us to really reliably. We still have to make sure we got the right, we manage our channels and our account and how we run them. We've got a standard for doing that. But it's, without that, we couldn't do what we do. Before the pandemic hit, we were already in the process of using wireless acoustic mics as part of a pilot for our medicine faculty. We had a subject that was running, or a course for nurses in emergency. It was, I think, a master's course, and they would come in to the classroom for 3 days or a week at a time for intensives. But we had students from right around Australia, so we had some in Darwin. They couldn't come down here, so they needed to connect remotely. We used Cisco codecs at that point, and we needed for the remote students to be able to hear them. They're no longer didactic teaching, where it's all flipped class, it's all collaborative, so it's all students reacting together, not asking questions, but discussing back and forwards. And the remote students need to hear each other, which is easy because they're all got a headset mic on or a mic in their own room on Zoom, but it's the ones in the room. People in the room can all hear each other, but how do we get that to the far end? We tried different things. The academics said, we'll just use a handheld mic we got and pass it around. Well, no one wanted to touch anything and anyone else touch at that point, so that didn't work. But also, that's a question and answer tool, and it's very slow. it's not this collaborative stuff, you know, and so that simply didn't work. That's when we started rolling out, and we did some pilots. One in this, our key pilot was in this space, not using Cisco, but using pure web conferencing with Zoom, and we did some piloting with that with different faculties in here, engineering and IT faculty, and with our learning and teaching people, and we evaluated that, did some tweaks and things through that first semester. Then we started rolling them out across, and this summer we will complete all of our collaborative spaces. 60 person and above will have, even a lot of our 30 person collaborative will have gooseneck mics on the table. And what that does do, it allows this, they're off by default when the academic starts a class and talks. They're not active. It helps keep it clean for the far end. He just turns them on. They're managed automatically, so only two mics at a time are on. And that's based on who's talking and how loud they are. But it means they sit at the end of the table, little 10-inch gooseneck. They're using the table as a boundary effect, and they're very clear and very close sounding. You know, you think it's a long way away, but when you hear it compared to other options, it sounds very clear to the students at the far end. And anyone at the table can talk. You know, if you're sitting on the side of the mic, it's a cardioid and you're getting less level, but you're closer. So it actually has exactly the same level wherever you sit around it. It actually works for us. We did a lot of testing. We tried it with an Omni mic, putting it in the middle, but it picks up too much of the room. We were pretty sure it was going to do that, but we needed to prove, you know, the difference, and it was chalk and cheese between the two. And these mics, they're on charges. You just pull them out, sit them on the table, and automatically come on. That's all the students have to do. We've probably rolled out maybe close to 1,500 gooseneck mics. We have at the end of this summer break, when before we come start next semester, we'll have about 3,500 Shure ULXD channels across the university. So that's all on one fleet. We can see the whole lot on our network, and we have to manage them all. But we're very happy with the results. They're very reliable. The gooseneck mic also, the other thing, the benefit is that we in these collaborative, the ceiling speakers in those, it's just one feed to them all, but we're able to give a little bit of voice lift. We've got a lot of specialised EQ so that we get the best sound on the speakers and then also on the microphone, so we don't get really good level of feedback. But it's not voice reinforcement, it's just a bit of lift. So if you're in two sides of the room and someone's talking on one side, it really helps you. People say to us, oh, it's not really doing anything. So we mute the mic and we go, oh, it sort of disappears, you know. A huge difference, but it's about intelligibility, and it connects those people, you know, feel like they're much closer.